So let us look at last in, first out, LIFO. So with LIFO, the principle is the first goods to be sold are the ones that were actually last purchased. So that's first in, first out. So the closing inventory will be formed by the first goods that were purchased. So let me just illustrate the principle. What we are saying is, for example, you stack your inventory in a box. So you buy your inventory, you stack them. You buy your inventory, you stack them. You buy your inventory, you stack them. If you want to start to sell, obviously you're gonna take the ones that are on top because those ones are the ones that are near to you. So because of that, you will actually first sell those that actually came in last. Then you go like that until you go the last one. Because of this, you mean that if you have sold this one, you have sold this one, you have sold this one, the last part you haven't sold, meaning that our closing inventory will be formed by the items that were actually purchased first. So that's what we mean. So with this, let me illustrate with the example, the same example that we did with FIFO. So the example reads as follows. On 1 January 2021, Mr. G started a business, buying and selling a special yarn. He invested 400,000 in the business, and during the next 6 months, the following transaction occurred. So this is what happened in the next 6 months. The yarn installed is in a rented premise, and closing inventory of the yarn counted on June 30 was 500 boxes. Other expenses incurred and paid in cash during the 6 months was amounting to 23,000. Right. So they're asking us to actually prepare a stores ledger card. Right. This time around, we're going to use the LIFO method. So using the LIFO method, we have to come up with the same diagram as the one we did with FIFO. So we'll start transaction by transaction. So we'll start with the first transaction on 13 January, which they bought 200 boxes at 72. So we're saying 200 boxes at 72,000 per unit will be 2,000 divided by 200. That will find the unit price, which will be 360. So that's happening on 13 January, right? There is no issue on the same date. That means our balance will be 200 at 360. The value will be 72,000. We can close that one. We'll go to the second transaction, which is on 8 February. They actually bought another consignment of 400 with 152. So we're saying on 8 February, they bought a consignment of 400 at 152. The value will be 152,000 divided by 400, which is 380. Right? There's no issue, the same date. That means our balance will be the 200 that is in stock at 360. That's 72,000 as the value. Then the new consignment of 400 at 380, which is 152, together being 224,000. So we'll close for that one. We'll go to the next transaction. The next transaction is happening on 10 February. They actually sold 500. So we're saying on 10 February, there is no receipt, but a sale of 500. We're saying last in, first out. So the ones that came in last, which is the 400 in this case, should go out first. So again, we're saying 400. The remaining 100 will be based on the 200. So it's going to be 100. So we're going to say at 380 at 360. So if we multiply those, we're going to find 152,000. And if we multiply this is 36. When we add them up, we're finding 188,000, and here the 500. Right? Now our stock will only remain with the 100 that is remaining after they removed 100 from the 200. So it's going to say 100 at 360 That's 36,000, right? So we're saying 100, 36,000. So we can close that one as well. So, the next date is on 11 March. They actually bought 600 boxes at 240. So we're saying 11 March. So 600 boxes at 240,000. The value per unit will be 240,000 divided by 600, which is 400. There's no issue on that day. That means the balance now is going to be 100 units at 36,000. Then 400 units, no, rather 600 units at 400, which is 240 here, which is 37 here, 36. So when you add them up, you find 276,000, and here you find 700 boxes. You can actually close out that one. So we'll go to the next transaction. The next transaction is occurring on 12th April. 12th April, they also bought another consignment of 400 at 140,000. So saying at 140,000, they bought another consignment of 400. Right? 400. So per unit will be 140,000 divided by 400, which is 350. Right? That's on 12th April. There's no issue that day. That means the balance will be the 100 that is in stock at 360. That's 36,000. The 600 that is in stock at 400. That's 240,000. And the new consignment of 400 at 350, which is 140. If you add up this, you should find 416. If you add up this, you should find 1.1 units in stock right now. We close that up. That means the next date is 20 April. 20 April, they actually sold 600. Right? So we're saying 20 April, they did not receive, but they issued 600 units boxes. So we're saying last in, first out. So we'll start with the 400. They will sell the 400 first because those ones came on last. Then the remaining 200 will come from the 600. We were saying 200. So we're saying 400, 350, rather the other way around. So we're saying 350, then 400. So this is going to be 80,000. Well, this one will be 140,000. If you add that up, it's kind of a 220,000. Right? Our balance, it will mean there will be 100 at 360. That's 36,000. On the 600, 200 have been sold. That means only 400 is remaining at 400, which is 160,000. Together, 196,000. So we can close up that. That means the boxes are 500 there. Let's do another transaction. Another transaction is on 15 January. 15 January, 500 boxes were bought at 140,000. So we're saying on 15 June, rather, 500 boxes were bought at 140,000. That means per unit be 140,000 divided by 500, which is 208. There's no issue on the same date. That means the balance is going to be 100 at 360. That's 36,000. 400 at 400. That's 160,000. Then 500 at 280, which is 140,000. If we add this up, we should find 336,000. If you add this up, we should find 1,000. Right? We can close that one up. So let us look at another transaction, which is over on 25. They actually sold 400 at 400, right? So we're saying 400. That's on the 25th of January. They actually sold 400. So we're saying last in, first out. So the whole 400 will come from the last consignment, which is 500 units. So it will come from there. That means the value will be 280. If you multiply that, you should find 112. Right? 1,000. That means our balance, there was going to be 100, then 400, then the 100 that is remaining in the 500. That means this is 360, 400, this is 208. So this is 28,000, 160,000, and this is 36,000. If you add this up, right? If you add 36,000, 160,000, and 28,000, you should find 224,000. That's what's happening. All the transactions have been done. But they also did an inventory count on 30 June. 30 June, they counted that there are 500 boxes. There are 500 boxes. But in our stores ledger card, we can see that the balance here is 600. Meaning there's been stock lost, right? It's either it has been stolen or it has been damaged, but that's stock loss. The difference which is 100. So it should be treated as an issue. So we're saying on 30 June will be an issue of 100, which is the stock loss. Then will be for last in first out. So we use the value of 28,000. 28 rather, 280. So if you multiply, you find 28,000. So that means now the balance will be 100 at 260, which is 36,000. 400 at 400,000, which will be 160,000. If you add them up, we find 196,000. If you add up, the quantity will be 500, the value that was actually counted. So this is what you were supposed to do using FIFO, LIFO, last in, first out. So let us draw up a statement of profit or loss. So for us to draw up a statement for profit or loss, we'll start with what is the sales. So for us to find the sales, we're going to add up the figures of the sales that we are not using when you are coming out with our sales, our stores ledger card. So we are going to add 250 plus 270 plus 152, which is 672. So we're going to say 672 as our sales. There's no opening inventory, that's a dash. The purchases, we'll have to add the amount of purchases. So we're going to add 72,000, 152,000, 240,000, 140,000, 140,000. We should find 744,000. 744,000. 744,000. So just to mention the treatment of stock loss, we say that there's a stock loss of 100. Stock loss should not be treated as cost of sale or cost of production. Rather, should be treated as an expense when it comes to our profit or loss. So in this case, instead of saying that our closing inventory is worth 196,000, we won't say that because that included what? A stock loss. So what we'll say is the closing inventory will be based on before the stock loss, which is 244,000. So it will be 224,000. So when we subtract, we're finding 520,000. If we subtract, we should find 152. This is our gross profit. Now let's go to the expenses. The expenses, they said that they paid 23,000, right, for expenses in cash. So we're saying 23,000. Stock losses, I said that we should treat them as an expense. So we have to go see what was the value of our stock loss. So we'll go on our ledger and see that the value of stock losses was 28,000. So we put 28,000. So we're saying 28,000. When you add that, we should find 15,000 as the total expenses, right? If we subtract from the gross profit, we are finding 101 as our net profit. This is how we are supposed to do the LIFO. So let us look at the advantages and disadvantages. So the advantages of LIFO is that we have realistic production cost or cost of sales. Therefore, we have realistic profit as well, right? And it is ideal in hyperinflation. So just to elaborate, so if this was my stack, so I said this is I bought in January for 10 kwacha, then March, September, November, right? So on December. So I'm saying this is 12 kwacha, 15 kwacha, 20 kwacha. Currently, right now, the value of the inventories, if you go on the market, is 21 kwacha. So we're saying that it will produce realistic cost of sales or production cost. Because what we are saying is our production cost will be based on what? Last in first out. Because when we sell, we're gonna be basing on the last in first out. That means we're gonna base on 20 at first. If we sell these ones as well, will be based on 15. So if we compare that 20 and 21, the figure is just a small difference, right? It's close to the figure of the current market value right now. On to December, that's the current market value. So the difference, the figure is closer to that. So because it's closer to that, we're saying that our figure is realistic. Even if we compare with 15,000, yeah, there's some difference. But if we compare with the ones that came in earlier, this one will bring a more realistic figure rather than what? Taking 10,000. So unlike FIFO, which we are saying that the production cost is unrealistic, for LIFO, the production cost is realistic. So because it's realistic, it will also affect our gross profit, making the gross profit also to be realistic. And the other thing is it is ideal in hyperinflation. When we're talking about hyperinflation, we're talking about persistent increase of what? Items, the cost of items. So we're saying that, like what the economy in Zimbabwe, you remember certain time they could actually go buy bread at 30,000 US dollars. So that's hyperinflation. Their items were increasing at a fast rate. That's hyperinflation. So we're saying that LIFO is ideal in such situation. The disadvantage is that the value of inventory is unrealistic, or it is understated or low. So the same example, because the closing event will be based on those that came out first, it will be based on a value that is low. Have you seen? That means we'll base our inventory at 10 kwacha in this case. That's why we're saying that it is unrealistic coming up with the value of the inventory, which is the opposite of FIFO, where we're saying that inventory is valued at a realistic value. So that's to do with that. So let us look at the other, which is weighted average. So with weighted average, what we do is every time there's a consignment or a new purchase, we'll have to calculate a new weighted average. So how do we calculate the new weighted average? What's the formula of calculating the new weighted average? So the new weighted average will be calculated as, the formula is this one. We're saying cost of quantity in stock. That means in stock, what is the value of stock right now, plus the cost of receipt, whatever you have bought, the new consignment, how much does it cost, over quantity in stock. So we're saying how many items are in stock right now, plus the quantity that you have, how many have you received right now. If you divide, you will find the weighted average. So whenever there's a new purchase, there's a consignment, we will have to calculate a new weighted average. So we'll have the same box. So we'll use the same data to do that. So let us use the FIFO now, the weighted average. So for us to come up with the weighted average, we're going to start. The first activity is 13,000. On 13 January, right? We actually bought 200 boxes at 72,000. If we want to buy unit price, we're going to say 72,000 over 200, which is 360. There's no issue on the same date. That means we have to calculate a weighted average. So, right? Weighted average. So the question is, what is the quantity in stock right now? In stock, there's 0 right now. So I think 0. What is the new receipt? The value of the new receipt, 32,000. What is the quantity in stock? There are 0 units. What is the new receipt, the quantity, there are 200. So that will be the thing. So we're going to say 720 divided by 200, which is the same as 360. So we're saying the quantity is 200, the value is 360, and the unit value is 72,000. We'll go on the next. The next transaction is on 8 February we have a new consignment of 400 at 152,000. So we're saying on 8 February, 400 units at 152. If we want to find the unit price, we're going to say 152 over 400, which is 380. So there's no issue. So because there is a new consignment, we'll have to calculate a new weighted average. So for us to calculate the new weighted average, we're saying that the quantity, the value of quantity in stock, right now the value is 772,000 plus the value of the new receipt. The new receipt is worth 152,000 over the number of units in the stores right now is 200. The new receipt is 400. So when we divide, we should find the new weighted average. In that case, we should find 376.33. 373.33. The balance will be the 200 in store plus the new consignment 600. So for us to find the value, we're going to say 600 times the weighted average, which is 373.33. The answer that we should find is 224,000. We're done with that one. So we'll go to the next, right? The next is on 10 February, they actually sold, right? 500 units. So we're saying 10 February, they actually sold, not received. They sold items of 500 units. So what is the value that we're going to use, right? We're going to use the recent calculated what? Weighted average. In this case, the recent calculated average is the 373.33. Because we only calculate weighted average when there's a new consignment, not when we issue, but when there's a new consignment. So the recent calculated was the 373.33. So if you multiply 500 by 3733, we should find 186,665. So the balance will be, there are 600 in stores, we have sold 500, that means 100 is remaining. That means the recent calculated is what? 373.33. If we multiply this, we should find 37,333. That means we are done with that one. We'll go to the next. The next is on 11 March, when there's a new consignment. That means we have to calculate the new weighted average at a value of 240. So we're saying on 11 March, right? There's actually a new consignment of 600 at a value of 240,000. So per unit, it will be 240,000 over 600, which is 400. There's no issue. Now we have to calculate a new weighted average. For us to calculate a new weighted average, we are saying that the value of quantity in store, right? So the value right now is 37,300. Now the new value, which is 240,000, over the quantity in stores, which is 100,000 right now, plus the new consignment, which is 600. So if we divide that, we should find the new weighted average to be 396.19. 396.19. So that's the new weighted average. What is the balance right now? So you have 160 in store, 100 in stores. We have actually bought a new consignment of 600, together 700. So we have to multiply 700 times 396.19. The answer that we should find is 277,333. That means we're done with that one. We'll go to the next transaction. The next transaction is on 12 April. So 12 April, there's another consignment of 400 at 140,000. So we're saying 12 April, right? There's 400 at 140,000. Right, the unit price would be 140,000 over 400, which is 350. There's no issue on the same date. That means we have to calculate a new weighted average. So for us to calculate a new weighted average, we are going to say that what is the value in stock right now? Right, the value in stock right now is 277,333. 277,333. Right, plus the value of the new consignment, which is 140. Then the quantity in stock right now is 700, plus the new quantity, which is 400. Together, it will be 1.1. So if you divide, you should find a new weighted average. Right? The new weighted average will be 379.39. Right? So what is the balance in stock right now? We had 700, we have added 400, together will be 1.1. So if we multiply that, we should find 417,333. So we are done with 12th April. Now let's go to the next, which is 20 April. They actually sold 600. So we're saying on 20 April, they sold, right? They sold 600. This will be based on the recently calculated what? Weighted average. So it's going to be 379.39. If we multiply 600 times 379.39, right? So that's on 20 April, right? So we should find 227,634, right? That means now in our stock, the amount that is remaining is there was 1,100. We have sold 600. That means 500 units are remaining. Will be based on what? The recently calculated what? Weighted average, which is 379.39. So if we multiply those two numbers, right, we should find 189,695. So we'll go to the next. So the next is on the 15th of June. The 15th of June, there's 600, another consignment of 140, right? So we're saying 15th of June, another consignment of 500 at 140, right? At 140,000. So the unit price will be 140,000 divided by 500, which is 280. There's no issue on the same date. Now the value, we have to calculate a new weighted average. For us to calculate a new weighted average, we're going to say, what is the value of the quantities in stock? So we're saying 189,695 plus the new value, which is 140, over how many are there in our stock, which is 500, plus, right, which is 500. What is the new consignment? 500, together 1,000. If you divide this, you should find a new average. So the new average will be 329.7. Right? The balance will be 1,000. I'm saying that 500 is stock and the new consignment of 500, that's 1,000. So if you multiply these two numbers, you should find 329,695. So we are done with that one. So we'll go to the last transaction, which will happen on the 25th of January, which they sold 400. 400. So we're saying 25 June, they actually sold 400. This will be based on the recently calculated weighted average, which is 329.7. If you multiply 400 times 329, you'll find 131,880, right? That means now our balance will be 600. 600, what we are saying that 100,000, 1,000 minus 400 that we have sold, 600, right? 600 will be based on the recently calculated weighted average. So if you multiply these two, you'll find a value of 197,820. So this is how you do it. But right now, our inventory is showing that it's the 600. But when they did the inventory count, they are only 500. This is a stock loss. A stock loss should be treated as an expense, as you said. It should not be part of what? Part of cost of production or cost of sales. So we have to find the stock loss. We're saying there are 600, but we have counted 500. That means only 100 is the stock loss. So we'll say that we'll treat this as an issue on this schedule. So we're saying on 30th June, there's a stock loss of 100 because there was no any consignment between here. We'll use the weighted average calculated recently, right? The one calculated recently is 329.7. So if we multiply that, right, we should find 32,970, right? So our balance will be 500 because we're saying they are lost 600 times the stock loss 500 times 329. If you multiply that, you should find 164,850. If you want to get the weighted average, right, is that just remember that whenever there's a new consignment, you calculate a new weighted average. That's the only time you can get a new weighted average. So that's how you're supposed to handle a situation like that. So if we were to come up with a statement of profit or loss, we should say sales. The sales figure will be the same, right? Which is the addition of this. So it will be 672,000. Now, cost of sales, opening inventory, there was no, right? Purchases, we have to add up the value of purchases. So this is the value of purchases. If you add them up, we're going to find 744, right? So it's 744. Let's closing inventory. Because I said that stock losses should be treated as expenses rather than cost of production. What will mean that our closing inventory on our statement of profit loss won't be based on this one, because this includes what? A stock loss. Will be based of a closing inventory right before the stock loss, which is 197,829. So we're saying 197,820 rather. So if we subtract, we should find a value of 546,180. If we subtract this from our sales figure, we should find a gross profit of 125,820. So this is our gross profit. Now under expenses, we'll start with the other expenses, which they say that they paid 23,000 for the expenses for cash, 23,000. Now the stock loss will come here. Stock loss, let's see how much did we value our stock loss. So it's this one of 100, we valued at 32,970. So we're saying 32,970. If you sum up this, you should find 55,970. So if you subtract, you should find a profit of 69,850. So this is the net profit. So what are the advantages of using this method? The advantage is that simple to operate, since the calculation within inventory are minimized. Because every time, have you seen how this one is? We have just it has been fast. Have you seen? Only this. It's simple. You don't have to actually say whenever I'm selling, I should keep track, or which one came first or which one came last. That is not there. So that's why we're saying that it's simple in calculation as an advantage, and there's no need to analyze the inventory delivery, right? So we don't have to look at the movement, which one came first and which one came last, and there's minimum calculations. That's why we haven't taken long to finish that one. The disadvantage is that both inventory values and production cost are far from market value, because we are taking the average, right? Both inventory value and both inventory value and cost of production will be far from market value. That's the disadvantage. So that's what is all about stock valuation. So we can just appreciate the statement with all both. So for all the three FIFO, LIFO, and AFIFO had the same sales, right? The same purchases. What differed here is the inventory. In this case, LIFO having the highest value of having the highest value of inventory, FIFO having the lowest, and the AFIFO having the middle value, right? So that's it. That's how we can compare this. So that's how everything that we actually did has been summarized in this table, just to us to appreciate how the statements have differed. So thank you.